create a pedestrian pathway from where we anticipate and are working hard to get the relocated bus stop to land. And so that the pedestrian circulation is clearly defined and keeps the people arriving within the sphere of the entry to the building, not sort of wandering over the side trying to find their way around. Really haven't changed anything down here, although we do know from our preliminary conversations with the Bureau of Transportation that they will require that this small driveway and this small driveway be closed. And that's really more for intersection control here and not to create traffic clogging. And I don't think it has any negative impact on anything else. It's probably a good idea. So to come back here, and we'll get this at the floor plan a little bit more, but it remains the main entry with the idea that you pass through that threshold into this contained courtyard where processing and all takes place. So there's not any chance for a line and a bunch of people that be aggregated there near the front entrance. It's fully screened, which we'll see a little bit of in a future image. Can you go to the next one? I'll send this. Did I miss anything important? Okay, good. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to David. Okay. And if you want to go back to that other, you can start.
Thanks. Can everybody hear me? My name's David. I'm the landscape architect. While we're on this page, I just wanted to point out that we are proposing some trees in the parking lot. That's to help us get up to city compliance. So they're going to be meeting some screening. The city has different categories for screening, so they'll be meeting those requirements. But when it comes to selecting trees, we heard that we wanted trees that mitigate noise, mitigate smoke, odors, and from the people that operate this place, we want to find something that's drought tolerant, has minimal maintenance requirements. So there's a long list of things we're trying to think about when we're selecting trees. When it comes to plants that mitigate smoke and pollution, it basically comes down to leaf area and leaf type. Some plants, like the canyon live oak that I've pictured here, have little hairs on the leaves that increases the surface area. It's good at trapping small particulates, which is coming from the street and also from cigarette smoke. And then there's lists and lists of trees or plants that will absorb different gases, and we'll do the best we can. Ultimately, we're not going to be able to completely mitigate all the noises or all the odors or pollution, but we will be adding vegetation and doing our best. Inside the courtyard, we're going to be trying to meet a few programmatic elements. When you come in, there'll be a shelter, that's this kind of shaded area. There'll be some covered bike parking and some covered places to sit. We're thinking now that maybe we'll have some picnic tables, that's what these little hand rectangles are. And not all the bike parking can be covered, so there'll be some uncovered stretching along here and a couple other pods down here. We're thinking now, for efficiency's sake, that will also include some wall-mounted bike racks. Those are not quite as easy to use as a bike staple, but they are really space efficient. So maybe if you're not using your bike daily, that might be more of a long-term or a medium-term storage option. We're thinking of some vegetation here, possibly to help treat stormwater, but also just to kind of create a vegetative buffer between the neighbors. See down here is an example of a simple screen with a vine growing on it. It's very space efficient, cost efficient, low maintenance way to do that. It helps with mitigate noise and smoke, and it's quite attractive. And this darker green area is going to be an artificial turf that's designed to handle pets, so it's quite natural looking. It's incredibly well draining. It's antibacterial. It's very easy to take care of. We put it out in the sun and the rain because the rain kind of helps everything flush through. The sun also reinforces kind of just keeping it disinfected. But that should be a high functioning, low maintenance option and kind of a nice feature in the center courtyard. Is there any questions about the landscape?
What do you mean by screening?
Pardon me?
What do you mean by the term screening?
I guess, can I use your pointer as well? We were thinking of adding just like a tall, basically a fence with mesh on it to grow lines on it to kind of create a green wall that helps enclose the courtyard and is kind of an attractive edge to be against and creates a little separation between the courtyard and the neighboring apartments.
Okay. So it's another term for hiding the homeless, essentially.
No, it's more of just
Yeah,
a
no,
tool
it
to
is.
create a little
That's
separation.
pretty much what it is.
So I do want to remind, we'll have time for public comment towards the end of the meeting. That was a good clarifying question. Thank you.
While we have this image up, I'll mention this area that David referred to, which we've covered. And the way in which we covered is another component of the whole thing of mitigating smoke. Because we've got a very simple, if you imagine just a gable roof, like every house, and every kid's drawing up a house. But then there's another similar smaller gable sitting on top of it, and it's open, so that we're going to pick up either from the north or the south, oh, I see what you mean. The north or the south, given that its edges are facing north and south. We'll be able to pick up the prevailing breezes, whether storms and air, wind is coming from south or north, which happens in both cases here, and that will then pick the smoke up and drive it up into the atmosphere, away from the buildings, away from the ground. So that's another piece in that. And since that's the smoking area, that's where we really want to make best use of that. Okay, and while I was thinking ahead, this is sort of a quick image. You see the two roofs here on top of each other. So here's the entry in a very still schematic form, but in terms of the idea. So we're looking from the north at the main entry gate, and this screen is intended to pick up, and we've been sort of non-committal because we don't want to overwhelm what happens eventually with the murals, because the murals become the focal point. But the screen is a bridge between the existing mural and what we hope to be, with RAC's help, another one, and to pick up color, pattern, the use of solid materials and perforated metal to make that a screen that you can both see through and that kind of keeps the activities screened from the highway, from the street a bit. So this is yet to be fully developed. We kind of hope that we can hold off getting too committed there until we know what's going to happen on the blank wall, because it'd be nice to really fully integrate those two. And then this is the roof over there, which is a combination of corrugated metal and translucent plastic panels, so that it's not dark, it's light underneath there. Okay, so several people have asked about the interior, and I think the idea that we can give you renderings of the interior is tough. This is a pretty tight space. What really has driven the layout, which is that the sleeping areas are up in here. This area is administration. This is the dining and living, the communal spaces, and the kitchen. What we call the hygiene area, which is essentially where the bathrooms and showers all are, a bit more administration and some utility and support areas. This is really all like a puzzle. We basically have existing plumbing. We got to work with that, so that dictated where the hygiene areas are. We have to seismically upgrade the building. That requires some fairly robust new structure. That's driven things. We're going to be Through our efforts here, we're going to be also impacting the 7-Eleven in terms of upgrading it. The building will be, in addition to seismically upgraded, it will be fully sprinkled. So from a safety standpoint, both for the residents and for the neighborhood, it's a building that will be much safer from a fire standpoint than it currently is. So the main entrance I was talking about earlier up here into the courtyard, then the main building entrance here. There are other smaller points of exit which are really code required. Those are emergency exits that are alarmed. Somebody uses them, the administration knows. I think one of the other real interesting things is that you see that the administrative area really bridges between the sleeping and the use areas so that there's a sort of eyes on the activities and monitoring of what's going on to keep things working and keep it functionally going. I think several of you have been to the Willamette Center. Those who haven't, these are photos from that facility that we previously did, showing the bunk bed layouts, the use of some color to enliven the space. That's the last one. Oh. So, questions, comments? Yep. Microphone shut.
Hi. I just wanted to ask a clarifying question. I'm seeing on, if you go back to the one of the courtyard there, am I seeing correctly that the smokers area is also directly the entrance? So anybody walking into the shelter will have to walk through the smokers area, even if they are not a smoker? Okay. That seems not great for everybody, so we want to revisit that, or at least make it where the smoking area is designated not right directly at the entrance.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Because
part of the
I mean, it's a
conversation.
very large area, so the
Yeah,
smoking part
I just-
is off to the side.
it would be a pretty rude awakening to walk in as a non-smoker and get a face full of smoke at your place you're going to stay. So just thinking of comfort. And one other thing on the vegetative screens, if you might want to think of avoiding things that are extremely scented flowers because many people have allergies.
So maybe think about relocating the smoking area. For the committee, you know, the team talked a little bit about how they incorporated some of your input into the design. Do you see your input reflected here in general? I mean, is this a design that you think meets what you were kind of hoping would happen? I'm seeing some head nods. Any major concerns or something you think that's missing?
Hi, from a crime prevention perspective, the screen that you had examples of that's going to bridge the two murals, I would really like to encourage the perforations to be larger rather than smaller, so that people on the outside walking in can see what they're entering before they get in, and people on the inside exiting can see what they're entering before they leave. I really appreciate the screening aspect of that for the privacy for the residents, but I think it's really important that you have that visual control over the space both ways, and it puts people more on notice that they need to behave themselves on either side of that. So crime prevention really supports that.
That's why I was saying that is really very schematic. That is the intention of the panel.
Could you pull up a picture that maybe shows the 62nd Street, excuse me, the Holgate side of that wall? I know we've talked this afternoon about what's going to be there, I guess for the benefit of the rest of the committee, and also I know there's some residents here, what that's going to look like.
Well, I think there are two things we know and a lot of things we don't know at this stage. The two we know is we are going to definitely be, pardon me, David, for saying it this way, we're going to be attacking the landscaping there as part of both the crime prevention and the aesthetic improvements to pare it back to, and really to replace a lot of it and make it more suitable to that elevation and that nature. The second thing is we're kind of hoping, we're putting our hands together and praying a bit that we can get enough funding to do a mural here, because otherwise, there's nothing more than paint that we really have within the budget. And a mural would be, I think, a great addition, another great addition to the neighborhood. The one thing that Peggy Kendall and Raph mentioned when I was talking to her on the initial conversation, she said, well, you know, we've got Una Kim's mural from the old market thing, and she said, we really want to maybe sort of, if we could bring her back and have her administer a program for the other one at right angles to it, but this one we want to be completely different, so we give somebody else an opportunity. And since hers was kind of a community-based effort, where she led it as an artist, but she didn't actually do all the work, it was more an amalgamation of some students that she brought together. Peggy had some initial ideas, but I don't know exactly all the details, for some other similar groups that might be appropriate to do that south side, if that comes to pass.
From a sideline, I guess, standpoint, particularly for a resident who's walking down that stretch there, what are they going to see in that fence area, garbage area? I mean, what?
It'll be screened in much the same way as the other screening on the courtyard, to keep it, well, there's visibility, but to provide security